In this lesson, we're going to learn how to create a new form and include some controls, which I'll explain more about very soon, on the form to make a completed form. What we'd normally do to create a new form would be go to Project, Add Form, and create our form and rename from there. However, when we created a project, if you remember, Form 1 was included as default. So we're going to use that to start off with our first form. So we're going to right click and we're going to rename it. We're going to name it Athlete. We're going to rename Form 1 to be Athlete. So we right click, rename. Now from naming conventions, we're going to use FRM. So anywhere we see this in our project, we know for a fact it's a form. We're going to call this Athlete. And we're going to press OK. Now because we've replaced the default Form 1, we're going to get a message of confirmation. Now it says you're renaming a file. Would you also like to perform a rename in this project of all references to the code Form 1? Yes, we do. Now there may be an instance in the future where Form 1 comes up in the project, and I'll show you maybe where. If we want to start our project from different sections, different forms to start off with, we go to Project, Properties at the bottom there, SportsDB Properties, and this comes up. Now the starting form that we begin the project with can be changed as we go along to test the forms out, but you can see Form 1 still exists there. Now we don't want Form 1 because it will cause an error, so if we go to here and we claim Form Athlete, okay, and then we can close that down. Now if we reopen the project properties, now you can see the Form 1 is now gone. So that's one of the issues that you might come across if you find your project isn't working after you created your first form. Okay, so now that's there. Now this is very useful for all things in the future regarding forms are concerned. If you want to see the form design, you left click on the form, right click, and then you can see View Code and View Designer. We can't view the code at the moment, we haven't got anything in there. So go to View Designer, and then we simply get this form that you may remember from last time when we created the first project, and this is basically what it is. Now you'll see Form 1 appears here. Again, this is where the Form 1 can come back for you. Now we're going to change this. Now this gets displayed here, so we can put whatever we want here. So if we go to this and put Athlete Form, and that will then display when you press enter to there. But it's a two-stage process. We need to make 100% certain that in the name field, Form Athlete is already there as well. Okay, so that's the form prepared. Now this is linking now to the new event-driven program paradigm. This is really powerful now regarding data storage is concerned. And if we go into data sources and we find the U4 Sports main data set from last time, now what we can do, we can drag and drop form objects using the database information via this route here. Now we're creating the form Athlete. So if I click onto that, now you'll notice there's a little drop down box here, or combo box technically. If we click onto that, we can click a data grid view, which we'll come to very soon, or we can click details. If we click details and then simply drag this box then onto the form, you'll now notice quite a few things happen. This binding navigator, as it's called, appears to do certain things. We'll leave that there for now. We'll come back to them very soon. But you'll notice that the details from the athlete table has appeared automatically here for us. Now that's not just that's happened. If I am to press play or start, you'll know exactly what happens here. It brings the information up from the database automatically for us. So you can see here, it's the first record in the file. I can skip through these records quite easily. Okay, I can go to the beginning of the file, I can go to the end of the file, I can add new records, I can delete records, and I can save the records inside there, which is very, very powerful indeed. I'm just going to press stop on this. So I press stop the debugger. Okay, and then I can reorganize these. So if I want just the AthID and telephone number, I'm going to select the forms here, drag them out there for a minute. I'm going to put the telephone and this together. So I'm going to bring these around. And you can see it's very, very intuitive, and it's very simple and straightforward indeed. And I'm going to line them up. Now you can see the line guides, depending on where I want to line these up. If I want to line them on the bottom there, so the actual control names are the same, I'm going to click onto that and let go. Now we know they're all lined up very well indeed. Now there's also something else we can do to create tabs. So as we press the tab key, we can move from each one of these. So if we go to view and we go to tab list, tab order, I apologize if it's changed from this version. So tab order, you'll now notice that these tabs automatically appear. I want the ID to be the first tab, so I'll click onto that one. I want the first name, surname, and telephone number. Okay, they're already sorted, so therefore I can then go on to view. I can go on to tab order again, and that will disappear. Now if I run this now, you'll now notice that if I click on the tab, it tabs from each section of whichever order I wanted it to be in. Now you can decide which tab order you want them in the future, but that's how it generally works from there. Okay, better stop on that. Now that's just part of this power of Visual Studio. If I want to create a data grid view, which at the moment, and this has happened for a long time in database, it's okay seeing individual data, but I also like to see the complete table from which I can select any records I want and then edit the details inside here. And the way to do that is just as simple. If I click onto this here and select this time data grid view, again I'm going to simply drag and drop that to there. Now we've got a data grid which displays all the information. I'll reformat this first, so I'm going to actually resize this to be linked. Now you can see that format control, you can see the blue line up here. I know that's 100% then lined up properly. I can then line this up with the end of the form, drag this down, and I'm going to drag it up just a little bit more just to make sure there's some separation there. Now if I was to press play now, you'll now notice that the actual data grid view shows, but not just that. If I click onto one of these records, the information will then be there for us to change. And that is really, really powerful. Now we can change data into here and then click on to save. However, sometimes that causes errors, and we're going to make sure we try to avoid all errors in computer programming. Okay, if I press stop on this now I'm going to make certain we cannot edit inside here. Now, if you notice, there's a little box here with an arrow on it. If I click on the arrow, I don't want enable editing or adding or deleting, so I uncheck them boxes. Now, if I go on to play now, and if I select something in there and tap the keyboard, nothing's happening inside there. I can still change things here. That's fine. Okay. Now, there's also one other thing on this athlete form. We also do not want to change the athlete ID. We want the athlete ID to come from here, but we don't want you to change it because it's a normalized database and we want to make 100% certain these cannot change. The way this system runs, we have 40 athletes inside the competition at all times, no more. We can have less, but we cannot have any more than that. So we do not want the users to add records or delete records. We get rid of them very soon. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so that's very powerful indeed, and I'll show you now how we can prevent the users from adding athlete IDs. This is the control here. Now, if we click on the control to select it, there's many properties here in the properties window. Please don't be concerned with them. There's lots of things we're never going to really use in this course, so just be concerned with some of them. And this particular case is the enabled property. So if we go to enabled, you can see it's true at the moment. If we click onto that and select false, when we run the project, again, now we can't access the actual athlete ID, which is exactly the way we want it. We don't want any kind of changes inside there. Okay, so we are now going to press stop on that. And then we're going to look at these sources here. Now, I do not want people to add records. As I said before, it's a constraint we're going to use on this database. So we're going to right click on that and delete that source. That goes. I do not want people to delete records in this athletes table. So we're going to right click, delete that. I do want to save them, so I'll keep that save icon there. So if I run that now, you've now got the save icon. You've now got the you got the record locators. That's already fine. And every time we actually add a record or change some details now, we can click into there and change people's details. Now, this is very useful because, as I've mentioned before, we're not going to have any more than 40 records on this table, and every time a new competition starts, we can simply replace the forename, surname and telephone number of the new athletes. The ATH-IDs and the ATH-IDs, by the way, are the actual athlete numbers. They will get printed numbers that will wear on their vests and shorts with the numbers on there, so they will not change. They're actually going to be with them numbers until the competition finishes. So that's how we would use this data in its entirety. Okay, so this is a very useful, powerful system in the event-driven programming side of things. And next time we will look at putting some buttons on the forms to do certain things. As a recap, we first of all created a new form, or in this particular case, we renamed the form 1. We actually dragged onto the form database object from the U4 Sports main database. We dragged on details which gave us the ATH-ID, the forename, the telephone and the surname in fields to actually edit them details. We then dragged onto the form a data grid view, which then gives you an overall data view of all the records in the data tables. We then changed the athlete binding navigator to show only the options that were required. and then we learned how to run or start the project running and also stop the project. We also learned a little bit about properties of the form controls, and if you remember, we actually changed the enabled property of the authID from true to false, which meant the users could not then put new or change the athlete ID, which is in the primary key for the table, which you do not want users to change.